Welcome to People Love Process. Let's jump right into this. I think it's pretty natural as a creative person to look back at old work and at times kind of cringe. I know I do that myself. You might like the original idea, but feel you could vastly improve on the aesthetics execution-wise now as you think back on it. Well, in this movie, I'm going to revisit an illustration I did in the early 1990s and approach the same story it's based upon now using new methods and styling in vector format. This is going to have a lot of things that I think are going to be beneficial to you to see, so let's jump into it. Now, this was traditionally done, meaning I drew this original design here in pencil and then inked it with an ink pen. And I think the final coloring was using colored pencil with a combination of some colored markers back then. So nothing in this process was digital originally. So we're going to approach it using vector art. And as with almost every project I work on, it starts in drawing. So here's some of my drawing based off of the character that's going to be central to this motif. And in this case, we're going to have lions encircling him since the story is Daniel in the lion's den, and this is the lion I'm creating. Now, I only drew it once because I'm designing this illustration. This is where the discipline of design and illustration kind of merge. I'm working out my composition in a very graphic way using illustrative components, if you will. Now, after I drew this lion, I set it aside, moved on to something else I was working on, and I came back to this and I go, you know what? His head looks a little weird. I'm going to be building this symmetrically, but just something seemed off. I redrew it, and then I like this lion a lot better. I thought it had a little more character, and I think this is going to work better. So this is the one I moved forward with, scanned it in, scanned my drawing in, brought it into Photoshop, where I went ahead and did that replication of the lion 3 more times to encircle the central character of Daniel. And this is what we're going to move forward and build. Now, whenever I start building my artwork, I focus on one area at a time. I don't like jumping around because I find that I can miss detail or not pay attention to something as much as I should, and therefore I have to go back and like redo something later. So it's really important, in my opinion, to focus on one thing at a time and do it well. So in this case, we're going to focus on Daniel, but whenever I work, I try to combine methods so it makes the process easier. You don't always have to create every shape one anchor point at a time using the pen tool. Sometimes shape building is going to be a lot faster and more efficient. And in this case, I use a combination of both. So these shapes I created with the pen tool, but there's no Bezier curves to it. It's just flat shapes with flat sides, and they're very geometric. The only shaping I got into was on his torso shape up here, which I did some vector work here for one curve, but these curves, if I click on here, are just handles pulled out from one end and the other to get the curve needed. So not very complex. These are very easy to discern and create. Here's another one on his leg. But the way I handled the legs, I wanted to show you that because it's important. If I pull this one out, it's just the exact same end, but then this makes the calf. This is the top part of his thigh. Now, the reason why I did this is because later when I add shading, it's going to allow me to use them as masks in order to emphasize certain shape and form to make it easier. But we're going to use a lot of shape building here. For example, on his hand, I don't need to build this with one shape all the way around. I can build it, in this case, with 4 different shapes. So I did this for his thumb, these for his fingers, so I can select all of them and use Pathfinder and unite them. Now we're going to go back and add some little rounds to make the fingers a little more believable. Even though this isn't realistic, it's a graphic style, it's just going to make the process go a little faster, and it just makes building artwork a lot easier. So that one segment on the bottom part of his leg here, I'm going to copy it, Command-C, Command-F. Let's go ahead and color it so you can see which one I replicated. I'm going to drag these up. These are just simple rectangular shapes. making up the stripes on his garment. Select this leg, intersect with Pathfinder to get the final shape needed. So that's very simple type of vector building. Let's go ahead and get rid of the fill. And then on the back here, you can see how this is going to make up his back foot. But notice how it overlaps up here, because if I pull this out, it's just simply just one anchor point at a time. Once again, no curves in it whatsoever. And I'm going to use the shape here for the back part of his leg and thigh. Command C, Command F, go ahead and fill it in so you can see it. And we're going to have that on top, select the foot shape, and we'll trim it minus front to get the shape we want. Once again, we're going to go back and round some of these details to make it a little more elegant than it is right now. Right now it's kind of chunky with all the straight edges. We'll select that back end again, and this time all we're going to do is we're going to edit the sole of his sandal here with that. So shape building doesn't have to be complicated. Take the foot, clone it, select this strap, and intersect it with Pathfinder. Do the same thing on the next two. And you can see how quickly shape building can compose, and you're not doing a whole lot of heavy lifting, creatively speaking. It's just simple. Once you get to a point like this, this is where you could use the corner widget in Illustrator. Now, I've been using rounding before Illustrator ever had rounding because I use a plugin. But what I'm going to show you here, it's going to work the exact same way with Illustrator's feature. You just select a corner, let's say it's the shoulder, and it's going to look a lot nicer if we just round that, obviously. We'll go down to his elbow. We'll pull this up to get a nice round on this. And then let's go ahead and just focus on his backhand and foot down here. This is where we'll just add some subtle rounding for his fingers. It just makes them less robotic, I guess, and more human. We'll add a little curve on the bottom part of his toe like this, and then on his heel. And this will look a lot better than it being pointed like that. So that's how rounding can be used in combination with shape building to really make the process go faster. So let's go ahead and zoom in again, and we'll go ahead and turn on all the base vectors here. Notice his hat. I changed the shape of his hat. I just thought it looked better this way. Almost kind of look, now that I look at it, and this is what happens when you do a lot of shape association when you're creating stuff. I look at his hat now and I go, oh, it looks like a flower pot sitting on his head. So there's that. But notice my sketch. I had his arm a lot longer, but I made the decision to shorten it because it just looks better. Those are the type of art directive things you want to keep in mind. So let's turn on some a tonal family here. And we'll go ahead and turn our sketch off. We don't need it. And this tonal family has a lot of flat colors that we're going to fill these shapes with, as shown here. But notice I have some transparent colors here. If I select this and slide it over the top of the two colors on the left side of it, you can see how it creates a nice shading. This will be the shading color for these two values. Likewise, this will be the shading value for that gold. These will be the shading values for these purples like this. And then for his garment colors, we'll use these values for those as well. So kind of figuring that out even before you color is going to make the process go faster. Then you're not hunting and pecking and, okay, what color should this be? Kind of figure it out ahead of time and balance the colors if you can that way. So we're going to go ahead and just start coloring this figure. And we're just going to use our tonal family. I don't want any black, so I'm using a really dark brown. Not a whole lot of gold in this, but we'll put gold there. This will be purple. And we'll go ahead and make his beard's going to kind of be striped of sorts, but colored brown. So this will be dark brown. We'll color these a light hue. Because this is a darker area, not a lot of light, will be a little darker value than his face. We'll go ahead and color that. His teeth, we'll color those white. And his garment, will be this lighter color, and then we'll color the back one darker since it's further away. Same for his leg. And we'll color that the same. This will be a purple. Front part of his leg. This will be a light purple. And then on his waistband, we'll do light there, dark there. His sash, dark, and some light purple. All of these straps on his sandals, we'll do that lighter brown, and we'll do that black brown. This, once again, we'll get purple, maybe the lighter one like that. And then on his, oops, forgot this guy up here. This will be darker purple. And then on his collar, we'll color it the same as the base, but because we're using a global color, if I select that swatch, notice it has a triangle, meaning it's global. If we click into there, it's global. If I change that here, it'll change anywhere in my illustration. But if it's global, you can click on color. In this case, I don't want 100% value, but I don't want it transparent. All we're doing here is we're making a tint. So I'm going to make this a 65 tint to create the collar. So now that we have all of our base colors established, we're going to start shading these. And if I turn on the shading here, you can see I've already taken areas and I've masked a scatter brush in here. So what's a scatter brush? Let me move over a little bit. And there's an DVG lab where I go over scatter brushes more extensively. But I just want to show you this really quick. If I drag this brush out and drop it, this is all a scatter brush is. I created this using a gradient in Photoshop, added noise to it, blew it out until I had a TIFF image, brought it back in, image traced it in Illustrator, and now you can turn it into a scatter brush. You just drag it onto the brushes palette, select scatter brush, and you're going to get all these settings. These are randomizer settings. And the best way to explain this is try it and see if you like what it does. If it doesn't, go back, try different settings. I've never changed these settings once I found these because it works so good. So what these allow you to do is make sure that the brush rotates or randomly sizes. This one's pretty uniform. So if I grab the brush tool and whatever color I'm on, it's not a fill, it's the stroke color that will determine the brush color. So I have the brush selected, the color loaded, the tool selected. Make sure we're on the right layer. We're on the right layer. And then I can just paint out whatever brush I want. It's going to size it based off of the stroke. In this case, it's a 1. We're working pretty small here. If I go down, it'll size it like that. So in general, that's how scatter brushes work. I have a DVG lab on using scatter brushes and creating them. So make sure to check that out. But we're going to go ahead and apply a few here. And you can paint it out like I showed you, or you can just apply it to paths as we have here. So let's go ahead and zoom in just a little more like that. And we're going to take this path down here. And because this is going over his garment, we want to make sure to use this shading color. So this shading color, make sure we have fill selected, is this one. So we'll go here, select the path. Which one was that again? It's that one. So we'll select this. We'll select this color, and we're going to drop it into the stroke. Then we can go ahead and select the scatter brush, and it's like monster huge. We don't want it that much, so we have to scale our stroke back quite a bit. So we're going to go 0.35, and I think that works. And we're going to go transparency, and we're going to select multiply, but we don't want the value 100. It's way too dark, so we're going to hit the value. We'll try 35% value, and that looks good. And then we can take that top part of his back, the top part shape of his leg, select the brush we just created, and we're going to mask it. Now, to mask something, I just use F1 because I have keyboard shortcuts, but you would go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and it masks it there. So we now have that shading to define the edge to the bottom of his foot. We'll do the same thing with this shape here. We'll go up here. We'll color the stroke. In this case, we're probably going to use the same size. Right now, this is 0.5, so we'll go 35, like that. We'll go to brush. We'll go like that. Oops, we should have done that first because we're going to have to go back and readjust the stroke size. We'll do that. And now we're going to set multiply again. Actually, we had a different color for the dark down here. We had that one. So let's go ahead and just switch the color like that. And then we can go to transparency. We can set multiply. Once again, way too dark. So we'll adjust the value. We'll try 30. That looks good. We have this shape here. Make sure it's on front. That'll become our mask. And instead of going to where I showed you how to make a mask, I just hit F1 to mask it. Then I'm going to copy this to the clipboard, find this shape, which I want in front of that, and then I'll Command B, paste behind, and you can see how it creates that nice illusion of the side of his calf. So that's why I did it that way. We'll do one more, and this is going to be the shading we're using on the values in his head. So we'll select this. It'll be that color right there. So we'll go ahead and select that. We'll select that swatch, drop it into the strokes. We'll go ahead and select that. Once again, massive, huge, way too big. So we'll go ahead and scale it down using the stroke width of 0.35, like that. And now we're just going to apply multiply like this, and then we'll apply a value of, let's say, 30. That looks like he's sunburnt, like that, just to give it some subtle shading. This shape needs to be on top, so if you're not sure, just go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. Now you know it is. Select both, mask or F1 if you use keyboard shortcuts, like that, and you get that detailing. So that's the process I use to do the shading on this character. Now, once I get all the shading in place, I like to go back and add what I call deep shadows. And so these are hard shape vector shapes that we're going to use as shadowing. And we're going to go ahead and just select this. I'm going to select the dark color since it's on there. You can see how it does that, but it's not oriented right. So we're going to go ahead and cut that out, find the front part of his body and paste behind so it works the way it should. And we're going to select this. Again, select the shading color over here. Might even look better going a little darker like that. Let's see. I think it'd look better a little darker in 30. Yeah, that looks better. And so that's how I'll add subtle detailing like that. When it's all said and done, it's going to end up looking like this with all the detailing in it, with all the shading in it. And I think this is going to work well. So now we're going to move over and start kind of working through our lion and getting that buttoned up and then merging the two, and we're going to be done here. So let's go ahead, and on the sketch, I reoriented. You can see I slightly rotated it to the right. Daniel is kind of lopsided now, but I did that so I could build the dragon. Dragons would be cool too. Dragons would be cool too, but that's not part of the story. It's lions. So we're creating the lion symmetrically now. And once again, using simple shapes. So you can see I have 3 elliptical shapes here, and I can use that just to create the nose, like that. I can use a shape here with just a simple elliptical shape, and using Pathfinder minus front to get the final shape I want for his eyes. The same with his head. I've already built this shape with the pen tool. I can clone that, and then I can go ahead and trim that part of the ear, or maybe I want to trim the inner part of the ear. I can then go back, grab the pen tool, and I can go ahead and build the rest of the shape. In this case, his nose. Let's go ahead and snap it like that. And then I can clone it, Command-C, Command-F, select Reflect Tool, find a central anchor point, flip it. That gives me both the left and right nose. I can unite those together, take the nose, clone it, Command-C, Command-F, make sure it's in front, and then trim that nose shape I just created. So if you think like that, it makes building go a lot faster. This is the only part of this. I use the pen tool to create this part down here. So I can select this shape, kind of go like this to close it out. Select this, clone it, Command-C, Command-F, use the reflect tool, find a central anchor point, reflect it, select both of these, unite it, making sure this is on front, select the back that makes up the main, and minus front to create the final profile. And of course, I'd use the same methods to build the mouth. Once I have all the components, I can clone them, Command-C, Command-F, use the reflect tool, find a central anchor point to get all the art and reflect it over. So when it's all said and done, you end up with your art looking like this. And this is where I'll continue. I wanted some detailing on the main, but once again, I'm handling this graphically. So I'll take the main, clone it, Command-C, Command-F, select this detail, and then I'll go intersect to trim it on the inside. Now, I really don't need to trim the inside because this, when colored, is going to be on top of these other shapes. Right now, it's not. These shapes aren't hierarchically constructed that way. But if I select these two, and I went ahead and sent those to the back, once again, to do that, you just go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. I have it F4. And then once I colored the top shapes, you wouldn't see those. So I don't need to trim them. That's why I'm saying that. You might have wondered, well, why didn't you trim these? It's because you really don't need to once you fill stuff in. So when I start building the rest of the design, in this case, his claws, let's go and zoom in on this really quick. I could grab the pen tool, make sure we're on the right layer, and I could go something like this, make a little wedge, go over and grab the anchor point tool, and kind of adjust it like that. I could do it that way, but I like knowing it's going to be precise using a circle, and it's faster because once I do this, I just go minus front. Once I have one, I clone it, and then I can just move it over kind of like that, and then I can go Command-C, Command-D, Command-F, and that way I can duplicate it, select these three, unite them with Pathfinder. Once again, when you use Pathfinder, you want to make sure you turn it into a compound path instead of a group. And then I can select this shape, which is the circle guiding our drawing. I'll clone it, Command-C, Command-F. I'll select this, trim the bottom, select the circle again, make a copy of it, and then I'm just going to trim the bottom of his foot. So it can go really quickly. And the more you get used to working this way, the faster you're going to get. And you're going to love it because it'll help you to create stuff a lot more precise and a lot faster. And now that we have the lion, I also have a tonal family worked out for the lion. So we can just select different parts in terms of his torso, his front legs. All these guys are going to be colored this main character, or main color that is, like this. I'll color his bottom part a little darker. Inside of his mouth, dark brown. Teeth, white, no outline. Dark brown. This will be a variation of the base color. Because it's global, I can then go back and go, this would look good if it was light, kind of like that. So a lot of flexibility when you use tonal families if you pay attention to creating those. Inside of the ears will just be the shading like this. We're going to use this orange in here, and we're going to use the same shading to apply to the detailing. So you can see how quickly this comes together if you work out your tonal families ahead of time. We're going to color the tail, or the hair on the tail, the detail. We'll select these shapes. These will be this detail and maybe a little darker like that. And then these. we'll use the same detail like that. So you can see it goes pretty quick. If you take your time, it really makes the whole process easier. Now, as I move forward, I'm going to apply the exact same. Actually, let's zoom in so you can see this once I change the screen here. This is flat colors. You know, looks good. It's going to work good. Turn off our sketch there. And with the shading, looks awesome. I mean, just really looks really nice. It's going to be compatible with Daniel really well. And the whole reason I have a central circle is because it's at this point, I want to go ahead and just scale this circle up from the center. You want to make sure it's outside the edge of your artwork because that's going to be important. We're going to go back and turn on our original sketch. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to select both the circle and the lion. I'm going to rotate this back into place where I want it, kind of like this. Now that I have that, I can go ahead and clone this. Command C, Command F. It makes a copy of those elements. And then I'll just hold the Shift key down and it's going to snap it at those 45-degree coordinates. So we'll do that. And then I can go Command C, Command D, Command F. And then I can select the lion and go Command C, Command D, Command F. And that's how you can replicate them around there evenly. And it's not hard. Anybody can do this. Let's take a look at the final composition with Daniel. Turn off the sketch and the lions. And I think they work really well together. I think this is a fun illustration. And as I was looking at it, I was going, well, it's supposed to be Daniel and the lion's den. Maybe it needs a den. And I was thinking, well, how would I pull that off? And I drew this and I explored it. I went ahead and I said, okay, well, I'll go ahead and build this and see what that shape looks like. Maybe it just needs the shading. And I don't mind this, but I kind of like it without it. I think this gets a little too complicated. And the only thing I'm going to add now is some shading behind Daniel just to get him some atmosphere. I just drew out this squiggle here, and we're going to go back to the brushes. We're going to apply a brush to that squiggle. You know, that's squiggle. That's a funny word now that I say it. That's kind of way bigger than what we need. So we're going to adjust this line weight down. We're going to adjust the stroke to smaller. Obviously, we don't want it magenta. We want this pretty faint. So we're going to apply this kind of mute blue here. And it's still a little too dominant. So we're going to knock the value down by almost half. And I think that looks really good. So unlike a lot of careers where individuals peak and skills begin to decline with age, creativity in that respect is much like wine. It improves with age. It's a skill that only gets better with time if you stay diligent and keep at it. You're never going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. But if you're not making mistakes, in my opinion, you're not trying hard enough. So it's not always easy to see improvement in the moment. But if you take the time to look at what you did even 3 to 5 years ago and compare it to what you're doing now, you're going to see improvement. So stick with it, keep creating and growing, and you'll continue to surprise yourself. If you like this movie, please consider sharing a link to my YouTube channel on social media. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you for watching People Love Process. I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.